Most people never realized the game was decided before they were old enough to question it. Not because they were lazy, not because they weren't smart, and not because they didn't try hard enough, but because the system was never designed for speed. It was designed for delay. Delay in awareness, delay in confidence, delay in action, delay in belief. You're allowed to work hard, you're allowed to struggle, you're allowed to dream quietly. But the moment you try to move faster than expected, something strange happens. Resistance appears. Not always loud, not always obvious. Sometimes it's subtle. A raised eyebrow, a joke, a warning disguised as advice. Slow down. Be realistic. Don't rush it. Most people fail anyway. These phrases aren't meant to help you, they're meant to pace you. Because this system doesn't fear effort, it fears acceleration. Effort keeps you tired. Acceleration makes you dangerous. And the truth is, if you're watching this video right now, you're already ahead of schedule. Not financially, not socially, but mentally. You're seeing patterns most people won't recognize for another decade. And that's exactly why this phase feels uncomfortable. Because you're early, and the system does not like early. From the moment you're young, you're taught a timeline. School first, then work, then patience, then maybe freedom later. The message is subtle but consistent. Pay your dues. Earn your stripes. Your time will come. But what they never tell you is that your time is not a fixed date, it's a window. And windows close. Most people don't miss success because they weren't capable. They miss it because they were conditioned to wait. They were trained to associate speed with recklessness, to associate caution with intelligence, to associate comfort with safety. But comfort is not safety. Comfort is compliance. And compliance is how the system maintains control without force. Think about it. No one ever stops you directly. They don't need to. They just convince you that moving slowly is wise, that taking risks is irresponsible, that wanting more sooner is arrogant. So people stay in line, they follow the invisible clock, and by the time they realize the clock was never for them, the window is already narrowed. That's not an accident, that's the design. Here's something most people never consider. If success was purely about effort, everyone who works hard would win, but they don't. If success was about intelligence, everyone who understands the rules would escape, but they don't. What separates the few who break out early from the many who never do isn't talent. It's timing, awareness, the ability to recognize when acceleration is possible. The system is built on averages, average income, average career progression, average timelines, and averages only hold power if you believe you must move with them. But averages are not laws, they are expectations, and expectations are fragile. The moment you step outside of them, the system reacts, not violently, psychologically. It whispers doubt, it triggers fear, it activates shame, not from strangers, from people close to you, because they're still inside the average. And your movement threatens their belief that waiting is necessary. So they try to pull you back, not because they're bad people, but because your speed exposes their delay. This is why early success feels lonely. It separates you before it rewards you, before the money shows up, before the freedom arrives, before the proof is visible. You're isolated in the in-between, where you see the path clearly but haven't walked it yet. And this is where most people quit, not because they fail, but because they feel out of sync. They feel like they're moving too fast for their environment, too ambitious, too intense, too focused. So they slow down to fit in. They mute their urgency. They dilute their goals. They postpone their execution. And the system smiles because another potential threat has chosen patience over momentum. Let me tell you something that isn't popular but is true. The system doesn't reward consistency alone. It rewards bursts of intelligent aggression, periods where you compress years into months, where you move while others hesitate, where you act before the crowd validates the direction. Every major leap in history came from someone moving too fast, too early, too aggressively, too confidently. They were told to wait, they didn't. And by the time the system caught up, it was too late. Momentum had already compounded, the rules had already been bent, the advantage was locked in. This is why the early phase is the most dangerous. Not because you'll lose money, but because you'll lose nerve, because there's no applause yet, no social proof, no external validation, just you, your logic, and your execution. And the system exploits this silence. It makes you question whether you're rushing, whether you're delusional, whether you should slow down just in case. But here's the reality. If you were actually rushing, you wouldn't feel this calm. Urgency doesn't feel chaotic, it feels focused. Pressure doesn't feel loud, it feels sharp. Confusion is noisy, clarity is quiet. And if your mind feels quiet right now, that's not recklessness, that's alignment. And the system teaches people to fear speed because speed breaks predictability. Predictability is how systems scale. If everyone moves at the same pace, outcomes are manageable, forecastable, controllable. But speed introduces variables. People who move fast create asymmetry. They find gaps before they're patched. They exploit inefficiencies before they're regulated. They build leverage before competition arrives. This is why every new opportunity feels too good to be true in the beginning, because it hasn't been normalized yet. Once it's normalized, it's saturated. Once it's saturated, it's average. Once it's average, it's safe. And safe rarely makes anyone wealthy. You're not supposed to win this early. You're supposed to struggle first. You're supposed to waste time. You're supposed to learn the hard way. You're supposed to stay busy without leverage, because leverage changes the game. Leverage multiplies effort. Leverage collapses timelines. Leverage removes dependency. And dependency is the system's strongest asset. The more you depend on it, the more predictable you become. The less leverage you have, the longer you stay. Look around. Most people aren't trapped. They're occupied. Busy schedules, busy obligations, busy distractions. Just enough movement to feel productive, not enough leverage to escape. The system doesn't cage people. It distracts them until they forget they were ever meant to leave. And the moment someone tries to exit early, alarms go off. Not literal alarms, social ones. Who do you think you are? That won't last. You got lucky. Don't get ahead of yourself. These aren't criticisms, they're containment mechanisms, designed to slow you down long enough for the average to catch up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're executing properly, you will outgrow people. Conversations will feel repetitive. Advice will feel outdated. Opinions will feel emotionally driven instead of logical. And this doesn't mean you're better. It means you're operating on a different clock. A clock that prioritizes leverage over labor, systems over effort, positioning over permission. This clock is invisible to most people, which is why they think you're moving too fast. They can't see what you see yet. The biggest mistake people make at this stage is explaining themselves. They try to justify their speed. They seek approval, they want reassurance, but reassurance is always delayed. It comes after results, never before, and by the time reassurance arrives, you don't need it anymore, because momentum has replaced doubt. Let me be clear, moving fast does not mean being reckless, it means being decisive. It means recognizing when the downside is capped and the upside is asymmetric. It means acting before certainty arrives, because certainty always arrives late, after the opportunity has been diluted, after the advantage has been shared, after the system has adjusted. If you wait for certainty, you will always be average. This is why the early movers look irrational from the outside. They act without permission, they invest without guarantees, they commit without applause, and later everyone calls it obvious. But it was never obvious. It was just timed correctly. Right now you're in the compression phase, where effort turns into structure, where confusion turns into clarity, where small wins start stacking invisibly. This phase feels quiet, almost boring. That's a good sign. Noise means chaos. Silence means alignment. And the system wants you tired. Tired people don't accelerate. Tired people don't question. Tired people don't escape. So it rewards exhaustion, overwork, burnout, busyness, but it penalizes leverage. It penalizes efficiency. It penalizes people who figure things out too early because those people don't need it anymore. You don't need permission to move faster. You don't need consensus. You don't need validation. You need precision, a clear direction, a repeatable system, and the discipline to execute without emotional interference. That's it. Most people fail not because they couldn't succeed, but because they slowed down to feel normal. They traded momentum for comfort. They traded speed for approval, and approval never compounds. If you've been feeling like you're ahead of your environment, if you've been sensing that waiting feels wrong, if you've been questioning why everything seems designed to delay you, that's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is the first real form of power. The system doesn't collapse when people see it. It collapses when people stop needing it. When they build their own leverage, when they control their own inputs, when they stop trading time for permission. That's why this phase matters, not because of the money, but because of the positioning. Once you're positioned correctly, the rest is inevitable. But you're not supposed to win this early, but that doesn't mean you can't. It just means you'll do it quietly, without applause, without validation, without permission. And by the time the system notices, you'll already be gone. If this video clarified something you couldn't quite put into words, you're already ahead. Stay sharp, stay precise, and don't slow down just to make other people comfortable. The system doesn't reward comfort, it rewards leverage. And leverage favors the early, always.